We are the wine experts.
I taste the 4,000 wines you don't have time to taste every year.
A good wine should have balance, elegance, and most importantly, should bring you to a sense of place.
We review the world's greatest wines.
We are skilled, passionate wine professionals.
We are the International Wine Authority.
We are the wine experts.
We are independent.
We are Robert Parker Wine Advocate.
Hello and welcome. Congratulations on your most recent purchase of Genesis G90 long wheelbase. I'm your host, Advanced Sommelier Anthony Mueller from Robert Parker Wine Advocate. We review the top wines of the world, and today we have 8 fantastic wines for you to taste today for our masterclass called Great Wines of the World. You should have received in the mail the Robert Parker Wine Advocate G90 long wheelbase pack with the wines inside. Now, some quick housekeeping with these bottles, the vials. I recommend keeping the entire package inside the fridge for 20 minutes before you open, just to put a nice chill on the vials. Also, you'll notice that you have 4 vials per package. When you go to open them, you don't necessarily need to pour the entire vial into the glass. Feel free to save some for later. These wines should stay fine inside the vial for 3 to 5 days, as long as they're kept in proper temperature. So after chilling them for about 20 minutes in the fridge, feel free to start pulling them out and we can take it from there. So those are the vials. Along with the vials, you would have received a packet. So you have your beautiful color, of course. Inside there, you'll have place cards, pictures of the estate or chateau. On the back, you'll have a place for your wine glass, information to take notes if you wish as well. Along with that, you'll have a small booklet about Robert Parker Wine Advocate, a little introduction of what we do. Robert Parker himself, the man, created the 100-point system, 100 points being the highest score in wine critical review. With that, we have information of all the different reviewers, of where we review wine. Only the finest wines are reviewed, along with yours truly, information about myself as a sommelier and wine reviewer, and information on each wine. So feel free to acclimate yourself with these as we go on. So let's begin with the first wine for today. This will be the Chateau Smith au Lafite 2005. We have a beautiful picture of the estate, the 2005. The reverse, we have the place card. So we'll put our glass here. We're going to open our vial. 2005 for Bordeaux was an absolutely stellar vintage. Fantastic. Smith Lafitte is a classic Bordeaux producer. You can see from the color, it has this beautiful, deep magenta rim with touches of garnet starting to happen. With Bordeaux specifically, I love Bordeaux after about 10 years of age, but with 2005 vintage, just absolutely stunning. Let's go ahead and smell it. A fantastic wine. Right away, you can get the sense of this beautiful earthiness, but still ripe fruit. There's this undercurrent of pencil lead and pencil shavings, this fine rockiness, but there's this elegant oak that carries everything up, and then slightly wilted, slightly dusty flowers that are just fantastic. Let's taste. Stunning. The wine has this beautiful rocky minerality, firm tannins that first firm up, but then they loosen and they're beautifully silky. It's a very stunning wine. You'll notice that sometimes I might slurp the wine. That's because I'm aerating the wine over the palate, helping to open up the wine on the palate. So I apologize if I'm slurping my wine. It's what the professionals do. We have this beautiful essence of dusty plum, dark cherry, subtle hints of herbs here that are just beautiful. The finish on this wine, it just continues and lingers and lingers and lingers. I've been talking now for about 30 seconds after swallowing this wine, and I can still taste the wine on the palate. That is a sign of a remarkable wine. Very, very beautiful. This is a medium to full-bodied wine. This is a very food-friendly wine as well. You'll typically pair wines like this with beautiful aged cuts of meat, steaks, New York. You have even filet mignon would be absolutely exquisite with this, with sauteed mushrooms. Beautiful. As this opens up in the glass, I get more of the earthy nature of Bordeaux. They typically say that in Europe, in the old world, you'll find more earth tones. In the new world, you'll typically find more sun and ripe fruit. Here, I'm struck with this elegant earth essence, this fine rocky minerality, but carrying under all of that beautiful earth is supple, delicious fruit that now, 2005, it's more than 15 years old and it's starting to develop those tertiary aromas that are very, very beautiful. I could sit here all day and drink wines like this. It's very, very beautiful. So what I like to do is keep a touch left inside each glass. Again, not pouring all of the wine inside the vial, just so after all 8 wines are poured, we can go back and we can look at each wine individually and compare, especially wine 1 and wine 2, since they're from the same producer from different vintages. So I'm gonna do that right now. Next we have the 2009 Smith Lafitte from Bordeaux. The same producer, different vintage, 2005, 2009, 2010, all hailed as brilliant vintages. So let's set it up. You'll notice that when you open the vial, it might have a little bit of a hiss and there might be some gas. That's just from the filtration of taking the bottle, taking the wine out of the original bottle to fill inside here. It's all done with inert gas. And looking at the 2009, you'll notice that it's slightly more vibrant than the 2005. It's a little brighter. It has an edge of garnet that's slightly happening, but you'll notice that it has a watery meniscus. That still means it's still rather youthful. And right at that 10-year mark, just after 10 years, that's when I find things start to get really, really special. So let's take a smell. This is fantastic juice. I see exactly why it was rated 100 points, the highest score from Robert Parker Wine Advocate. Immediately, you're struck with just opulent, fresh juiciness, beautiful fruit, slightly dusty. It doesn't have necessarily the earthiness of the 05, but the 2009, it's more floral. It has riper fruit. There still is some of that nice seductive oak that comes through, but specifically, I'm struck with the purity of fruit. It's a very clean expression that is perfectly in balance. Whenever we talk about 100-point wines, what makes a 100-point wine? What's the difference between a 98, a 99, and a 100-point wine? For me, I tend to say it elicits an emotional response. And if you were to go back and rewind the tape, you might see myself getting a little too excited when first smelling this wine. It's devastatingly gorgeous. Let's take a sip. Wow. Wow. It just continues on the palate. Its persistence. This is a legendary wine. The freshness of fruit, the brightness, the purity, the concentration, the body. I feel that this wine has a fuller body than the 2005 previously tried. However, it's the brightness and the purity of fruit that I am struck with, I'm on with. It still has those beautiful tertiary aromas, the mushroom, a touch of forest floor, that kind of rocky minerality that's very pleasing, very food friendly. But this, I can see why it's 2 points higher at the perfect score of 100 points. As this aerates in the glass, I can see that it's beginning to change just slightly. Whenever you have a beautiful wine, sometimes people will decant a wine or they'll spin the wine just like this. Sometimes people get a little nervous, so if you try putting the wine on the table, grabbing 2 fingers at the base, giving it a swirl like this, you'll help to aerate the wine. What that does is it helps the wine to wake up. My analogy of waking up a wine and decanting a wine is like being on an airplane for 10 hours. The first thing you want to do once you get off the airplane is stretch the legs, stretch the shoulders. You want to open up. You feel better. That's what we're doing when we swirl and aerate and decant wines. This wine, it's going to live for decades. It's a beautiful, beautiful wine. It's juicy, it's aromatic, it's floral, it's finely dusty. The tannins are incredibly silky and supple. I can see this working with a wide variety of dishes. Red meats, mostly because we have a lot of red wine to try. That will go perfect with red meats. It's delicious. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. As the wine aerates, it's starting to slightly change. It's becoming a touch more mineral and showing more of the Bordeaux characteristics of kind of that rocky earth minerality. I can feel the tannin starting to kind of grip the palate, which means it's incredibly food friendly. The protein in red meats and the tannins in wine and acid in wine, they molecularly bond. This is why red meats and red wine are such great lovers. I could drink the rest of this right now, but I'm gonna hold. I hope you're enjoying this wine. We have another beautiful Bordeaux to get to, so I'm gonna move this 2009 Smith Haute Lafitte there. Next we have the 2016 La Fleur de Petrus from Bordeaux. Let's grab this out of the package. 2016. Now, the Fleur de Petrus is a beautiful, elegant wine. You'll notice it's going to be slightly different than the first two, not only because of its age. This is a 2016, also a fantastic vintage, but the 5 and the 9, great vintages, but it's also the youngest. You'll notice that it will most likely have the brightest color of the first 3 Bordeaux wines poured so far. It's softer, it's supple, it's elegant. There is this beautiful nuance of green herbaceousness that I find very pleasing. It's varietally correct to what the wine is and where it comes from. Let's take a smell and sniff. It's slightly spicy. There's a little bit of almost like sage or fern. But there's this beautiful bright cherry note with this nice dusty minerality. Let's take a taste. The action on the palate is slightly different, but it's still just as delicious. The palate has this beautiful, ripe sensation to the wine. You have this nice, firm, dusty cherry essence with, red plum, a touch of, cassis, and there's this beautiful nuance of that sage and the slight herbs that come through. That's really, really delightful. We have notions of baking spices, indicating some French oak, and we have this fine minerality that you can tell it's a young wine. A wine like this, you can drink now, but this is the kind of wine that you want to put in your cellar for a couple more years, lay it down, wait for its 10th birthday, and then open the bottle up. In 2026, 2028, you'll notice it will be completely different from how it's showing today, but still, part of what we do at the Wine Advocate is knowing how a wine tastes now, but understanding the complexities, the elegance, the width, the breadth, the depth, the length, the finish, all of these intangibles in the wine, and trying to figure out how long it's going to go. And this has all the making of a great wine. Yeah, 2016, there was a very good year for Europe in general. Italy, France, parts of even Germany, all fantastic. Spain. It's great to see 3 different Bordeaux's in such unique, different, captures of time, 2005, 2009, 2016. You can see the progression of aged, some developing, and fresh. And you get this essence of where the wine is going to go. And it's absolutely delightful. Fantastic wine. Fantastic. Let's move on to the last French wine for today, we have the 2015 Domaine La Jeunesse. This is Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Vieux Vin. Vieux Vin means old vines. So we have this beautiful expression of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. I'm a fan of old vines. There's something about them. They have a story to tell. When a vine gets to be a certain age, after a couple decades, it ultimately ends up producing less fruit, which means the canopy, the plant itself, produces about the same amount of leaves but gives you less fruit. Therefore, it intensifies some of the characteristics, and that plant puts a lot of energy into the remaining fruit, and you have some amazing energy and concentration and purity with those expressions. So Châteauneuf-du-Pape, old vines. Looking at this, you can see it's a different color altogether. It has this kind of slightly faded ruby with this soft, watery edge, indicating its youth. But when you smell it, you immediately know it doesn't smell like the first three. It has this unique Rhone-esque sensation, where from the Rhone, they have these unique soil types. They're called galets, especially in Châteauneuf, where there's basically little river rocks. There's round stones where they're met with this the mistral, which is this very severe wind. So these plants are planted very low to the ground, and they can sometimes take a beating. But when you look at the plants, especially from an old vine, they look old and gnarled, and they're fighters. They want to produce, and they're just fantastic. So with the Jeunesse Old Vine 2015 Châteauneuf, you can see the purity of fruit, where that has this concentration of bright cherries, almost like some sour plum, but there's this undercurrent of, you have almost like rosemary, almost a touch of lavender, some a touch of violet as well, but slightly herbaceous and also rocky, almost like being near river rocks once they've just been wet, or petrichor. It's the smell of when it first starts to rain, that first 5 minutes, and it has this beautiful, beautiful kind of hot, wet rock minerality to it, but still this ripe, juicy expression that envelops the entire expression. So let's take a taste. Although it looks the lightest, it has a certain gravitas and power to the wine. Immediately, it hits the palate and expands and explodes. It doesn't necessarily have the same refinement of Bordeaux, but for Châteauneuf-du-Pape, it has its own unique expression and has captured everything that I'm looking from Châteauneuf-du-Pape. This is a fantastic expression of old vine Châteauneuf. Juicy cherry, bright, almost like candied licorice, almost confected, but it still has this, minerality that is right down the backbone of the expression. There's a ripeness and a richness here. The ripeness of the fruit is the ripest that I've seen so far for these first 4 French wines. Grenache tends to be very ripe. It tends to get a little higher in alcohol, more so than Bordeaux typically. But this has beautiful weight for being such a robust and generous wine. You should be careful with Châteauneuf and Grenache from France. It tends to be higher in alcohol. I've seen some Châteauneuf-du-Papes going as high as 15.5, almost 16% alcohol, where Bordeaux is typically anywhere between 13.5 to as high as 15.2. So the Chateauneuf tends to have a little more opulence and generosity, and it's a creeper where if you are drinking a glass or two of this, you might not notice the alcohol until it creeps up on you and realize, maybe I should slow down. But the ripeness and the elegance of the fruit is just exquisite. It's literally crystalline. It's pure, focused, floral. It's devastatingly gorgeous. I'm gonna put this back here. We're gonna go and head out of France. We're gonna head to Italy. The 2016 Tenuta Argentiera is a Super Tuscan coming from Tuscany, from Bulgaria. It's a beautiful expression of wine, very much like a Bordeaux blend, if you will. 2016, hailed as one of the greatest vintages in Tuscany and in Italy for quite some time. Just absolutely stellar, fantastic stuff. So the 2016 Super Tuscan, we have a beautiful earth-driven expression that has this almost like this fine rock minerality. Typically Tuscany is somewhat uniform. I understand that this property has a lot of different soils very close together, and it's very close to the sea as well. I think it's only 2 kilometers from the sea, and gets this brightness that you can sense in the wine, but also this rusticness from the old world. So we have a beautifully balanced wine. This has a lot of complexity, a lot of different aromas, some fresh fruit. There's that kind of iron-rich, rocky minerality as well. It's a beautiful expression of Super Tuscan. I believe this is mostly Cabernet. There's some Merlot, some Cabernet Franc, and there's some Petit Verdot planted on the property. And we have this robust, almost New World expression, but this fine, rocky minerality that tells me it's the old world. These firm tannins, very food friendly. I can see this working with a lot of different red meats, even grilled pork chops. Wow, it's very complex. Super Tuscans are unique from the standpoint of, for a long time, the Italian government, they didn't want certain varietals. They only would allow certain varietals in certain places. And it wasn't until the breaking of the understanding of that where certain producers would defy the regulations and said, I want to make a better quality wine than what I'm allowed to do. So they would start planting different things, and when you weren't planting what you were allowed to plant within that region, you automatically were declassified to the lowest, one of the lowest regional designations. And time again, they proved that they continued to make high quality wines. And now we have Bulgaria, which is a DOC that produces some of the greatest Super Tuscans on the planet. And for a 97-point wine, Tenuta Argentiera is doing a fantastic job. Yeah, this also has that fine, dusty, rocky minerality with this juicy expression of fruit. Has layers And as it sets on the palate, I find that this is wine that I find almost that I'm chewing, where it's kind of chewy, and I find my palate, my mouth starting to salivate, and it's a very food-friendly wine. This I can see working with, again, a wide variety of dishes. Grilled pork chops. I can see this working well with, wild boar, bistecca, Florentini. Beautiful, beautiful red meats. There's an opulence to this wine that I typically don't get with the majority of Italian wines. They tend to be a little bit more rustic, but this has this brightness and breadth and depth that I find very, very pleasing. Yeah, very food friendly. As you can see, I've drinking a fair amount of this wine. It's a very food friendly wine and generous, and I want to continue drinking it. But we're gonna move on to the New World now. We have 2 more countries to review. So we've done France and now Italy. We're going to go to Australia, where we're going to see Clarendon Hills 2015 Australis Syrah. You can see from the color when I pour this wine, it's going to be big, dense, rich, juicy. 2015, also another fantastic vintage for Australia. Now, Shiraz and Syrah technically are the same grape, but they react completely different in the glass. So with this, you'll see that dark, dark, dark color. Australis is a beautiful expression of Shiraz. It's already dark in the glass. You can see significant staining of tears. It coats the glass. If I spin the glass and let it sit, you can see how much it stains the glass and coats the glass. Deep staining of tears. You can almost see like stripes. It almost looks like a zebra. We have a nose that is unmistakably Shiraz, but very, very high quality. This is another 100-point wine. When I smell this wine, you'll notice that right away it has a juiciness, but also an herbaceousness that is very, very distinct. Eucalyptus is one of the first things that comes to mind. Menthol, but the juiciness, there is this almost like blueberry pie essence to it. Chambord, black raspberry liqueur essence. But everything is in balance. It's moving. It's like watching a well-oiled machine do all of the intricate movements that it does. Wow. This is a generous wine. It has opulence, it has depth, it has bright acidity on the end. The finish continues to just expand. This is a gorgeous wine. There's all of these flavors, all these textures going on. You have these dark black fruit essences with this soft kind of crumbled dirt essence, this mineral tension to the wine that has the compounding effects of the natural herbaceous environment of Australia that herbaceous eucalyptus, menthol, fern, but then the opulence of the fruit, the spiciness of the wine, the herbaceousness of the effect, long lingering, hands down, 100 points. This is a beautiful, generous Shiraz, and whenever I find myself only wanting to smell the wine and not necessarily taste it, that's an excellent sign. And this has so much complexity and earth and terroir and opulence of fruit, all of these things going on. It's beautiful and gorgeous. As I get the wine spinning, it opens up. It's releasing some of those herbal essences, the menthol, the fern, sage, but I'm gaining this beautiful, soft, almost like maple, and this like plum compote, spiced plum compote that comes to life. This is a big wine. I don't think I would drink a glass or open a bottle just by itself, just to drink the bottle. This needs food. If you were to drink a bottle like this to yourself, I feel the alcohol, I feel the generosity, I also feel the tannins. This is still a very youthful wine, and it's going to go easily for another decade and a half, 2, possibly 3. Wow, it's a very generous wine, juicy. Yeah. There's even a touch of, like a kiss of volatility. It's a rich, opulent wine, and it's very shiny, very much like a shiny, brand new car. It's rich, it's powerful, yet still elegant and refined. We have 2 more wines to taste, both of which are from Napa, California, from the USA. We're going to start with the 2016 Cakebread Cellars Cabernet Sauvignon Dancing Bear Ranch. This is an absolute stunning wine. Cakebread Cellars, well known in the Napa Valley. We have a very rich, opulent style. This is why we're doing these 2 last. If we're to start with these 2 and then ultimately end up with Bordeaux, sometimes the generosity of Napa can sometimes taint the palate, be a little too rough and heavy on it. So we're going to do the 2016 Cakebread Dancing Bear. Now, when looking at this wine, you have a dark ruby essence where you can actually see through. Not as much staining as the Shiraz, but it still has significant staining. When smelling, these wines tend to be marked with the classic opulence and generosity of Napa Valley Cabernet. These tend to be fruit-forward, rich, robust. Immediately, you can see the freshness with picturesque fruit. It's not necessarily sweet, but it's candied, almost like plum pie, cherry pie, blackberry pie. But it has this beautiful elegance, silky tannins, robust fruit, elegant oak, hints of maple, creme brulee. The finish just keeps going and going and going. There's so much going on with this wine. It's a very complex wine. I absolutely see why it got triple scores. Triple digits with the score. The opulence, the fruit. There's a soft nuance of sweet herbs and tobacco spice, hints of cigar box. But really, I'm struck with the purity, the freshness, and the amplitude of fresh, ripe, juicy fruit here. I've seen Napa Cabernet go too far, and when you have all that juicy fruit and not enough tannin and acid to frame, the entire thing just falls apart. Cakebread here has absolutely nailed it. It's beautiful. As I spin it in the glass, there's this subtle, almost like forest floor essence. This almost like turned earth that's very, very pleasing. But again, what drives the expression is this opulence, the fruit, the oak. It's a powerful wine. It's very thoughtful as well. It's very easy for Cabernet and Napa just to be wild and go on its own way. So when a thoughtful winemaker can take that wild horse and rein him back in and make sure everything is perfect and know how everything has to interact and everything congeals, you end up with something as special as this. The problem with some of these wines is it's gorgeous, it's ripe, it's ready to drink now, but this wine will continue to age beautifully for, years, more than a decade. I've had some of these wines that go back, 2, 3, 4 decades, and they're just stunning. Mind you, the style of the wine has changed, but the ripeness, the structure, the acid, the tannin, the oak integration, it's perfectly seamless, and I absolutely see why it got 100 points. This is a generous wine. Let me put this back here. Lastly, we go on to the final wine for today. When I saw this wine in the lineup being proposed, I said we need to do that last because it's a big boy. We'll see how dark it is. This is the 2016 Schaefer Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon Hillside Select, one of their most sought after Cabernets. When we pour the 2016 Schaefer Hillside Select, you'll see just why I want to do this one last. This is incredibly dark. It's incredibly juicy. This is Napa Cabernet with generosity. When I swirl this wine, you'll know and see just how dark and deep. Just putting it up there, you can see how deeply stained this wine is. This is a wine where if you collect a lot of and you drink it regularly, you're going to want to have a very good dentist or brush your teeth regularly because this will definitely stain your teeth. But its generosity is what always captures me. Yeah, very different from the cakebread, but with this you have this generous, firm grip, opulent, ripe fruit, but there's this delightful spiciness about the wine that just drives the sensation. We have notions of, it seems like fern and sage, almost like redwood, cedar, but the ripeness and opulence of a beautiful world-class wine. Wow. as the wine sits on the palate, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. There's this amplitude to the wine that just continues. It's persistent. It's tannic and lush. It's oaky yet fruity. It's all of the things almost at extremes, but within perfect balance and harmony. To say that this is a generous wine would be an understatement. This is a robust, hedonistic wine. This is the wine that you would almost, give as a gift and impress, the person you're giving it to. Is a generous, dense, focused, yet still tight. With the 16 cake bread, I didn't get necessarily as tight, which means that the Schaefer, it's going to offer a very food-friendly expression for the next decade or two, even three. There's this hint of roasted red pepper. That's sweet pepper that's roasted, and it's very delightful. In Cabernet, you typically will get that. There were some of those aspects with the first, certainly with the third wine today, with the Fleur Petrus, but with the first four wines altogether, they had this soft herbaceousness, but this has it with this very generous backbone. It's very food friendly and hedonistic. This wine is not for the faint of heart. It's a big, robust, tannic wine that I probably couldn't drink this by itself, just drinking a glass after glass. I need this with food. This is meant for food. Food and this wine are lovers. I see exactly why it scored triple digits. I'm struck with just how tannic it is. It really does grip the gum line and stay there. Where if you were to have a piece of red meats or steak, filet mignon, with this, I'm thinking ribeye, a good fatty cut of meat, fine quality. Ooh, yeah, that's where I am right now with this wine. It's utterly delightful. So with that, now we have all 8 glasses poured. I recommend going back and tasting them all side by side by side. And with your half-filled vials, feel free to put them in the fridge. They should stay fine for the next 3 to 5 days. The more filled they are, the longer they'll stay, so closer to 5 years. If they're less filled, like this guy here, you'll notice that there's more airspace. You should stay fine for 3 days or so. But go back, try them. I especially like to try wines on their second and third day, so feel free to try these wines tomorrow, the next day after that, and see how they evolve with time. That, to me, is a key indicator of how a wine will evolve over its life. If it's still fresh and vibrant on its second, third, even fourth day, that's a very good indicator of a high-quality wine. I tend to find that I enjoy the old world wines, the French, Italian wines, better on the second and third day. So if you've saved and reserved some wine inside the vial for following days, good for you. You've been patient, and you will reward yourself with enjoying some beautiful wines tomorrow and the next, or invite some friends over and share these beautiful wines with them. I hope you've enjoyed your time with me today, enjoying these beautiful 8 wines from the Robert Parker Masterclass of Great Wines of the World. These wines were specifically curated and presented for the owners of the Genesis G90 long wheelbase vehicle. If you have any further questions and like to be part of the Wine Advocate universe, please find us at robertparker.com. And until then, Gombe.